Welcome to a conversation with Dennis Glass, President and CEO, and Lisa Buckingham, Executive Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer, as well as Head of Brand and Enterprise Communication at Lincoln Financial Group. And also, Lisa is the 2017 Human Resources Executive of the Year. I'm Ken Freeman, Questrom Professor and Dean of the Questrom School of Business at Boston University. Dennis and Lisa, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll start with you, Dennis. Tell us your story. How did you get to where you are today? Are there defining moments that took place in your career today?
Oh, it was a long journey. My background is finance. Lincoln Financial Group is an insurance company that's finance-oriented. And so I just kept plugging along and doing the best job I could do at the moment in time. And it turned out well.
So step by step. When did you know you wanted to be in this industry?
I just jumped right into the industry on the investment side. So I wasn't thinking of the insurance industry at the time. I was thinking of investments. And then investments led to Chief Financial Officer, which led to the CEO.
And was there any defining moment along the way, or was it strictly, you were in the right place at the right time and built your skills and it all happened?
What happened was I made a decision with my wife to leave Milwaukee and move out of the investment business at Northwestern Mutual to a real estate development firm in Atlanta. And that was a small company. But it was a completely different experience in the context of working in a large organization to an entrepreneurial organization. And then I got back into the insurance business. And along the way, I had great mentors that made a big difference. Doing the right thing, thinking about accomplishing significant things, process, and it all worked together. But it was a good mix of experience in the context of big company, small company, investments, broader perspective. So
you sat in all the chairs and gotten to where you are today. And now, Lisa, how about yourself? Congratulations on the honor, fantastic. And what about your story?
Well, thank you very much. First, my story, I started working at 15 and 8 months, the minute I could have a work permit, and I went into retail. And as I was in high school, I thought I was going to be a television newscaster. And back in the day, it was called personnel, when I had an opportunity to do an internship with a broadcast firm on the Hill. And my manager brought me in a stock room and said, well, we'd really like to see if you would like to come into personnel. And I did a rotational assignment in HR, so we'll call it HR today, and that's how it happened. So for me, it's really the paths sometimes just define you. It's not always that you're defining your path.
So it wasn't a planful, no. I'm going to be a Chief Human Resources Officer?
No, not at all. I was going to be the next Jessica Savage.
Oh, were you? All right.
Unfortunately, she's not around anymore, no. But yeah, so I was very, very lucky to have the HR bug bite me, and the minute I went into it, there was no going back.
Wow. And now you spent time at Thomson Reuters for a significant period of time in your career before joining Lincoln.
Yes.
What led you to make the leap?
To Lincoln?
From
goodness.
So is the person sitting next to you perhaps as the boss in charge?
He's a very big part of it, but we're talking about career management right now. So I grew up on the Thomson side, and when we acquired, it was a very large merger of equals, as Dennis just talked about, and I did not get the #1 job. And so I became the head of global talent for 66,000 employees and had 93 countries I was responsible for, and working on the university and talent. And I received a phone call and a few phone calls for other jobs. And when I met Dennis, it was during the market crisis, very early days. And what I was so captured by was his commitment to these are very, very tough times, but we're going to invest in our talent because we are going to have the most amazing workforce ready for the next phase. And so, I mean, what HR person wouldn't want to run towards that?
So you're looking to the future, to a better tomorrow at a time where there's a deep crisis going on, and the CEO is paying attention to future, not only the mud of today that we have to navigate through.
Yeah, and we did both,
Yeah,
right? So we
yeah.
went through what we needed to, but we also built some amazing things, and the talent strategy was very clear and consistent and communicated. And I have to tell you, that was, it was a clincher for me.
So it sounds like values and culture predate Lisa at Lincoln, or at least your focus on the inside of driving a values-oriented firm, which has predated you as well. I know you came together through a merger of equals. What was it about Lisa that you said, she's the person? You know, many of our students wonder, well, how do I get picked from an array of great candidates? What was it about Lisa that also has led her to be the HR Executive of the Year in your mind?
Yeah, well, there's a lot to both of those stories, but we did a search. I decided that we needed more capability around talent. We needed an agenda, and I wasn't quite getting what I needed, and so I did a search, and Lisa's background fit very well with what I was trying to accomplish. Her personality fit very well with the company, sort of exciting, looking forward, positive attitude about getting things done. Culture at Lincoln is defined by our leadership traits. And those actually were developed by our broad management team, but in terms of trying to take these two companies together and create one culture, we thought it was best if we built that around our leadership traits, such as optimism, inclusion, execution, and there's 8 altogether. And we hire people that exhibit those traits, and we pay for people who exhibit those traits when they're here, and we train to all those things. And so that develops the culture. We know what the expectations are for leadership, and that just goes throughout the whole organization. Yeah. But Lisa and I sort of spearheaded that 10 years ago. You know, when you bring two companies together, define culture any way you want, but you have to work very hard to get people working together and having the same vision. Actually, sometimes it's as simple as having the same vocabulary.
Isn't that interesting?
And we did something interesting at that time. We created a class led by the Wharton Business School, and we had, it took us a year, but we took our top 100 people and put them all through that class, our curriculum, but we put in each class half of the people that were with one of the two companies and half with the other. And so coming out of that, we had a really good start.
Common experience.
Common experience, and they met each other, they had drinks with each other. So that worked very well. So that launched us, but the leadership traits are very important in terms of culture.
You said common language, and that is something that Dennis has always said, that we want common language. So when people are going into a room or into training or even presenting, let's make sure that our language meets that common language. And that has been, it sounds very simple, but it actually really hits home big time from the standpoint of who we are as an organization and from a values-based perspective as well. And so we really do work on that.
Constantly reinforcing
Absolutely.
that. So you arrive on the scene.
Yep.
The enterprise has gone through a significant integration process. You've got the government, the Great Recession is underway at full force. What did you decide how did you decide what to do in terms of advancing the agenda for human resources at Lincoln?
So a few things. The first was somebody from Thomson Reuters gave me the best advice. They said, make sure that you're spending more time out in the businesses than you are in your corporate seat. You know, don't get in that lonely place. And I already knew that intellectually, but it was good to have that little reminder. I met with Dennis and I met with all of the senior executives on the team, and then really did go out to all of our locations and just did stakeholder interviews. What are we doing well? What are we not doing well? What does HR mean to you? And it was really interesting because so for my first 90 days, I was drinking out of a fire hose. We had a lot going on in, trying to retain great people and recruit people during a crisis. And what I learned was take everything and make it simple. Like, let's figure out what our strategy is. And so then put together a recommendation, and I did it before 90 days. I went a little bit sooner. And we really talked about the talent agenda, number one. We were talking about, we had things we had to do just from the organization. But at the same time, I also had to spend time on, do I have the right people in the right job on my team as well? I'm supposed to be the coach for the organization on that. And so I had to take that time as well.
Make sure your house is in order.
And I actually did it before I even joined Lincoln. I spent a lot of time there on weekends and had dinners and breakfasts and lunches with people. But really to get to a place of, let's figure out what are the true needs from a people perspective. And there were tons of themes, and then just working with Dennis and the organization to say, what are we trying to do? And we did get to a great curriculum on what we wanted to do for the next several months with our top 80 that Dennis mentioned, and we were very consistent on that. Yeah. So
was diversity and inclusion with you right from the beginning as an agenda focus?
So even before I started, Dennis had said, this is a non-starter. This is so important to the organization, and this is not a program. We want to have a strategy, and I'd like to see it embedded in our culture. And it's been an amazing journey on that. Yeah. So I could speak for hours on what we've done, and I'm just so incredibly proud of our organization.
Sure. So Dennis, if you think about diversity and inclusion as the CEO, what are the one or two elements that you think have been most instrumental in helping to transform Lincoln into being viewed as a wonderfully diverse and inclusive enterprise?
This is where having a great HR person who has a broad view on what it takes to make a company successful. I think most companies will say we believe in diversity and inclusion, but to come back to our 8 leadership traits, we added it to our leadership traits to make sure people knew we were serious about it. We hired a diversity officer. The board was very supportive of it. And then you just have to work at it. But the one or two things, sort of at the simplest level, having a broad base of people with different experiences or different belief systems, I think that's, I sort of like to make decisions by hearing a lot of different perspectives, and so that's simple. Certainly at a diverse employee base, it helps you better understand the diversity of your customers and what they might be looking for. So there's quite a few substantive, just it's good sort of in a it's the right thing to do sense, but then substantively it adds quite significantly at the decision-making process, understanding customers. So it goes way beyond just doing the right thing. It has really positive business outcomes.
And we segmented it. We said we're going to look at it from a workplace, marketplace, and community. And then we really, it's not HR driven. We have an amazing chief diversity officer, and we have a council, and we have chair people, but we have business resource groups. And what I can tell you is the power is there. Yeah. So we're really working on, if you think about different areas of our business where we want to see growth, that's where we're focusing. And it's been just magical from the standpoint of, it's amazing who stands up and says, I want to be part of this. So it really is something that I will say 9 years later, D&I is embedded in our culture. It's not something that we have to go and remind people that this is what we're working on.
Congratulations. That's fantastic.
Thank you. We're honored.
Now, along the way also, you were given the opportunity to focus on helping Lincoln Financial Plan to become a digital firm.
Yes.
One might not necessarily think immediately of the Chief Human Resources Officer as the place one would go. What led you to say, please get us started here?
if we could just go back a little time, how did we come up with the idea that it was the right time to do this? And it started, and it actually was connected back to our leadership development program in the sense that each year, specific sense that in each year we have our not my direct reports, but the next level down, which we call our corporate leadership group, and about 80 people. And we spend as much money as it takes to bring the best speakers on subjects in to talk to this group over a couple of day period. So that development activity had as one of its speakers Ram Shriram. Ram Shriram, yeah.
Used to be on the Boston University faculty as his first position in academia.
Oh, is that right? Well, he's spectacular, and he gave a presentation around how the non-born digital companies like ourselves need to catch up with the born digital companies. And I interpreted that because I used to, on a customer service basis, I'd compete against Pruvermet, but today I'm competing against the expectations set by Uber with customers, and if they don't have that same. So that was one dimension of it. The other dimension was that we were doing a lot of digital activity already. It's not as if there wasn't any going on. And the third, with customer service these days and digitization, you can improve the level of customer service and save money at the same time. So all three of those things sort of blended together, and we decided to launch a major 5-year digital program to achieve those objectives. And it's underway. It's not easy. We hired a chief digital officer, and we're going along. But the first, to your question, why would Lisa participate in that? Lisa does a lot of things outside of her job that are project-oriented and important projects. And the first phase of this project was sort of the development of hypotheses about how can we use digital to achieve these objectives. And I needed someone who could recruit the best people in a short period of time, manage a complex project, knowing that once we decided what we were going to do, we'd probably turn it over to somebody else. But Lisa has helped the company outside her specific responsibilities because of her ability to do important projects in a very effective way and recruit the right people to the projects.
Very interesting. And you knew enough also not to be putting your hat in the ring to be the chief digital officer, I imagine, as well.
Actually, it was a struggle, to be honest.
Was it?
It was a struggle because I was really loving what we were going to do, but I also knew I'm probably better at driving the change from that perspective and really helping with the initiative. And you know, again, this, I hope we're not talking about a program ever, that we're talking about that we're just driving into new.
And all transformations boil down to people, don't they? I mean,
yeah,
it's
and
about the talent.
My background, so when I came to Thomson in 1994, we were a publishing company. So we owned the Globe and Mail, we had in tax and accounting and Westlaw Publishing, everything was print. And I was really incredibly blessed that I helped drive the digital side of it from the HR perspective. So I got it, and I knew Ram, and he had helped us as well. So look, I think you have to know where you're best suited, and it was a struggle, but we found the right person, and from my perspective, from an HR and communications perspective, we will be right with that entire transformation.
Now, your job title is longer than Chief Human Resources Officer and Executive Vice President. It has a few more words attached to it that related to brand and enterprise communication.
Yep.
Now, my sense is, at least traditionally in major businesses, the two have not necessarily been under the same person's job responsibility. What led you to make that decision to combine it with human resources?
Again, there's certain numbers of seats on my management committee that represent the serious activities that are going on in the company at a particular time. So the permanent members would include Lisa as head of HR. There'll never be a time where there's not the head of HR on my management team. And there were product heads on the management team. the Chief Financial Officer, General Counsel. But because our business is independent distribution, we sell all of our products to everyday Americans, but we sell it through third-party distribution. So we don't have a consumer level spend. And so it wouldn't make sense to have and this may change over time, but somebody whose full-time responsibilities would be on my management team reporting to me, but I wanted somebody great.
And you had an answer.
And I had an answer. And so I talked Lisa.
And you knew she wanted to be in broadcasting initially, right? Yeah. Lisa, it's all come back to roost.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and there's connections, because your best brand advertisers are your own employees and how they interact with customers, and so there's a connection to HR there. So it was just a good fit for Lincoln based on how much we could put towards that function.
And there are overlaps, I imagine, yes?
Huge, huge. And whenever folks don't see it, I don't understand it, because if you think about brand and employment brand and the value proposition, we have to tell the same story. The consistency, which we talked about earlier, is really there around even a candidacy experience, and then you go into employment experience and the brand experience. We have high expectations of that, and so it was pretty magical that it happened, and I was very happy, because it's one of those areas that, from a brand perspective, it just makes sense for Lincoln. And it's just been a big power engine for us with our recruiting, and just really the story, and even around wellness and financial wellness. So it just all ties together with what we do. So it makes sense.
You mentioned high expectations and recruiting, and of course in universities and business schools and more broadly in universities, we're all about hoping to develop talent that companies around the world would like to hire.
Yeah.
And as you think about the generation of students entering the workforce today, are there either strengths and or shortcomings that you think, particularly the shortcoming side, what can we be doing better as universities to provide students that are work ready to really make a contribution in your company?
Yeah, this is such a tough question, because this is not just a millennial question. It's really about expectations of coming into the workforce or coming into a financial services organization. My best answer to that would be, we want folks to come in and want to learn as much about the organization as possible. Mm-hmm. But can I just take a step back and say, when they're interviewing with us, they should have done some homework about what we are, who we are, what we do, what we serve, mm-hmm. and how we bring our products to market. It's surprising to me that we commit so much time to interviewing, and the market is very competitive. But I always also want our candidates to be incredibly prepared to want to say they've done their research and they want to come and work on this. Yeah, the other thing I would just say is, from a Lincoln perspective, we have so much development opportunities, and we want people to just drink out of a fire hose of all the awesome content we have, and the mentoring, and really what you can do and what you can learn. I never thought I was going to work in a financial services organization. I mean, honestly, and what I will tell you is you have to just, sometimes just stop and take time to learn and develop. And so my expectation for candidates is be prepared, work hard. You know, we're not all going to be an EVP on day 5 or year 5, but you have to love what you're doing. You have to love the company. You want to represent the brand, and I really hope you're having fun when you come to work.
Need to be all in.
Yeah, all in, all in.
Now, something we've been focusing on very heavily here, and I know others are starting to do as well and have been doing, is focusing on helping our students hopefully gain some thoughts about informed judgment, particularly as it relates to ethical behavior in light of all that's happened in the world. Yeah. Have either of you had an ethical dilemma during your career where you really were tested, where you really had to think to your own personal values, come to a conclusion and where maybe you learned something from that experience. Do you either have a story you might be willing to share?
Dennis always says that I have like a drawer of things that I have in HR that I deal with, but I'll let you start and then I'll tell you. I definitely have some.
You know, Ken, I can't actually say I have. I've always worked at companies where sort of doing the right thing was sort of expected of you. Mm-hmm. Now, doing the right thing is an easy thing to say. It's a hard thing for everybody to recognize what it is. So different lenses, different lenses, and those kind of things. But you know, I think if you start with, apologize, coming back to a strong set of leadership traits, and you send strong messages around doing the right thing and take action. I mean, so for example, if there's any gender bias being exhibited in our organization, you don't make it to the end of the day, and so you need to just make firm decisions quickly around these things. That gets the message out pretty quickly.
So holding people accountable is part of the leadership imperative to have an ethical culture.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It has to be consistent too, and we yes. really are, and we work on that.
No exceptions.
And we communicate that really broadly through performance reviews, through expectations, through goal setting, through just our communication, our code of conduct. I mean, we do everything that any Fortune 250 company or Fortune 500 company should do. And talking about doing the right thing, I think when you asked that question, what I was resonating on was a little personal. For me, from the standpoint, very early in my career, I was offered a very senior level job that I was probably not qualified for. And I sat back and I had accepted the job. And then I went and I spoke with my father, which I know you've read a few things that I had a very close relationship with my dad. And I went back and I rescinded my acceptance. And so from that perspective, that was an ethical dilemma for me personally in managing my career. And I didn't want to fail. And I didn't think I was ready to go to Silicon Valley. And this is in '99. You can paint the picture. Yes. And the mentor who I still have today, he was, although disappointed, he understood, but I probably could have done it in a better way. So these are learning moments in your life, and not everything's a success. Sure. And so that was an ethical dilemma to me, because of course I accepted the position. It was awesome. I thought I was going to just go out to Silicon Valley and rock the world, and then I literally sat up in the middle of the night and I was like, I am not qualified for this job. Forced yourself
to reflect and look at the reality as you saw it.
Yeah. So a little bit of a different answer, but it was very personal for me.
Now, HR, the profession of HR has been changing dramatically for a long time now. What's the toughest part of being a Chief Human Resources Officer in the year 2017?
Oh my gosh, I love my job so much. So let's just start with that. But managing expectations. So we have benefits, we have total rewards, we have wellness, we have all these things that we want to be the best at everything we can. And we have been very, very lucky to make sure that we're always looking at the market, making sure we're competitive. I would tell you, when you're managing billions of dollars assets under management, it's a very stressful moment because you're thinking about our employees' 401k or their defined contribution plans. Those are things that I don't take lightly. I don't take lightly workplace violence. These happen in every company. Security. We have cybersecurity issues now. There's so many things that it's just coming from every direction. But that's what makes the job interesting. But from an HR perspective, it's not just here's the policy manual, this is what you need to do. I also have to push on our policy and say, is this arcane? And we have to have a lot of conversation and work with the right people in our legal department and engagement. Just think about all the things that we have, because we want people to enjoy where they come. We're a highly regulated industry. but we also want people to flourish. So I push the limits at that from the standpoint in doing the right thing. But 5 years ago, we were just told, no, you can't have social media presence. And that's when I was coming into the brand and marketing, and I said, well, then that's going to be a problem because I see other companies doing it.
So you're looking forward in HR.
Of course. So those are the things. So HR, I just don't know. If you ask me in 5 years what HR is going to be, I say to all my colleagues and peers, we need to keep the human in it, but there's a lot of different things to make the human resources part of this even better. So leveraging technology, so the digital conversation going back to, and those are things that really we have to just keep pushing forward.
The final question you've already answered as I asked about students being ready for the workforce and be prepared and be prepared to work hard and learn throughout your career. Dennis, any final words of wisdom from your perspective about advice for students that are thinking about the world of work?
Well, I'm going to sort of tie my answer into your earlier question, which was, what can you do better at the university to help students be prepared? You know, businesses, let me use the analogy of a block of dry ice. With a block of dry ice, you have a lot of smoke around it, but that smoke doesn't give off the cold. What gives off the cold is the block of dry ice. And so you have to be very good at analytics to remove the non-important information and get down to the substantive issue. And in business school, you're taught to do good basic analysis. But the next step is an important step. You have to be able to communicate what you've learned and what you've analyzed. And what I find, a lot of people get caught up in the smoke, but even the ones that get to the block of dry ice, what's the substantive issue, what really makes a difference, then the ability to be able to communicate that and sell and have people understand complex things in a simple way. So I think people should spend a lot of time trying to understand, you know, sort of basic communication and how to convey things in the simplest sense. Because if you can take complex issues and analyze them and then communicate simply to people who might not understand it, you're going to go a long way. So that would be my opinion.
Excellent words of wisdom. Yeah. We've been in conversation with Dennis Glass and Lisa Buckingham of Lincoln Financial Group. Thank you for joining us, and thank you, Dennis and Lisa, for an inspiring conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us. It's great fun.